and welcome to the Granite Cornerstone. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Granite Cornerstone, episode number 2, the Grandmaster's Gab. We are joined tonight by 3 very distinguished guests, and it is my pleasure to introduce them. We have joining us from Rhode Island, the most worshipful past Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Rhode Island, Most Worshipful Brother Ken Poyton. Ken, welcome.
It's great to be with you, my brothers.
Joining us from the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, Most Worshipful Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, Most Worshipful Brother Richard Maggio. Grand Master, welcome.
Good evening. My pleasure to be here.
And with home field advantage this evening, joining us from the Grand Lodge of New Hampshire, the Most Worshipful Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of New Hampshire, Most Worshipful Brother Ken Clay. Grand Master, welcome.
Good evening, my brother, and to all those who have joined this podcast, welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us here this evening. We are here to get a little bit of an insight into what it is that the Grand Masters in our jurisdictions do and what it means to be Grand Master. So thank you to our guests this evening, and thank you to everybody watching. And with that, I think we'll just get started. So to kick this off, I guess one of the first questions that I'd like to ask is something that not a lot of brothers may have insight into. As Master of my lodge, I know that the things that I do behind the scenes are varied and sometimes aren't very visible, and I can only imagine what that means for you as the Grand Masters of your relative jurisdictions. So why don't you give us a little bit of an insight into what a day in the life of a Grand Master is like? Most Worshipful Poyton, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. Well, for me, I'm working, so I was doing work and Grand Master at the same time. And, in Rhode Island, it's it's a lot different, I think, than other states, but maybe not that different. My day would be, work and checking in the office and, see what's going on, if there been any invites that have come in that I need to know about. And so things like that would be a day of the life, a normal day. And then I would obviously get my work done and get ready to go to an event at night or on the weekends and be with the brethren or the Rainbow, D-Malay, whatever, and just go, go, go.
Go, go, go seems to be a theme with every Mason, but most certainly with the Grand Masters I've spoken to. Grandmaster Maggio, do you have anything that you'd like to tell us about?
Sure. We all know about all the fraternal things that we do, and it varies from state to state depending on how big the jurisdiction is. What caught me a little by surprise was all my other responsibilities. For example, I'm chairman of the Grand Lodge Board of Directors, and that group handles all the business aspects of the fraternity as well as managing the properties. We have a 110,000 square foot building in the corner of Boylston and Tremont Street, right across from the Common and the State House. And we have a facility out in Charlton. I'm also the president of the Masonic Education and Charity Trust, which oversees all the charitable activities of Grand Lodge. I'm also the chairman of the Grand Lodge Library and Museum Board of Directors, which is responsible for the Samuel Crocker Lawrence Library and Museum. I'm a member of the Masonic Health System, which is our campus in Overlook, which is a 450-acre campus that has independent living, post-acute, skilled nursing. We have about 600 employees, and we serve over 1,800 just with our OVNA.
Wow.
The other aspect, which kind of caught me a little off guard too, was the amount of time I need to spend in the office. We're pretty hands-on. Every time there's a donation to Grand Lodge or the Charity Trust, I sign every one of the letters that goes out as a thank you. In addition to diplomas, awards, and other documents. But I think probably the biggest challenge has been dealing on a day-to-day basis with problems. And those problems are numerous, and I'm sure we'll get into some of those later.
Oh, absolutely. And Grandmaster Clay, how about you?
Sure. So I too am a working man. So got to be pretty careful about how I manage the events of my day. I typically start out in the morning by checking to see if I've got any critical emails, and then I do my day job. But throughout my day job, I need to make sure that I'm staying abreast of things, both email and in the event that I receive any texts or calls. Then in the evening, if I'm not attending a Masonic activity, early on, I had to put together a notebook of my plan. And it's filled with all sorts of various elements. Right now, as many of you know, we're in the middle of a Lodge of Instruction. And so what I'm constantly doing is checking that to make sure that the events that we have coming up in the coming months are on track, that we've got plans that are coming into place. Certainly, COVID has had a dramatic impact on that. But the amount of planning and communication that's involved in this job really is something that caught me a little bit off guard in terms of how much work really goes into making sure that you've got a detailed plan, that you're adjusting that plan as needed, and then communicating it properly.
Most Worshipful Grandmaster Maggio, question for you. The other gentleman here this evening has said that they're still working. Are you still currently employed in the workforce?
I am not. I was retired when I came into this position. And frankly, I don't think it's possible to work full-time and be Grand Master of Massachusetts. I'm probably putting in right now without fraternal visits, etc., but just office time and dealing with issues throughout the jurisdiction. I'll bet I'd put in a good 40, 50 hours a week. And then the fraternal aspects are on top of that.
Obviously, Massachusetts is a much larger jurisdiction than either New Hampshire or Rhode Island. But I know most Worshipful Clay, the amount of travel that I've seen you do over the course of the last 18 months. And most Worshipful Poyton, if you could both give me a little bit of insight what it's like to juggle your Masonic obligations, especially in a busy season like visitation and Lodge of Instruction season, with your everyday life as a person outside of the lodge.
Well, I'm gonna make one statement. Never again will I complain about, I've got to travel to a Masonic function, because we all went through 4 months of wishing we could travel to a Masonic function and couldn't.
That's the truth.
So this weekend alone, I mean, as most of you know, we really have turned the lights back on here in New Hampshire, and I know that my distinguished colleagues have as well in their grand jurisdictions. This weekend alone, I had 4 functions that I attended. What that really means is having a very special lady at home that is able to tolerate us being gone a fair amount. Many times she's able to join me as well. And then you've got, extended family. I've got a situation now where I've got a member of my extended family that's staying with us. So these are all factors that play into really, I think, time management being critically important in this role.
Most Worshipful Brother Poyton?
Well, one of the fortunate things about Rhode Island is our size. We're small, so I don't have to worry about traveling to the farthest lodge away, which is about a 40-minute ride, and being home at a reasonable time. And so that was relatively easy for me. I would, I've got a position at work where I can leave a little early if need be. And so, if it was a long ride, I would bring my tails or whatever I had to wear that night to work, and I would just leave from the office. But, you do need a very understanding wife. But, I think both of us realized that, we weren't going to get into this and not do the best that we could. And she certainly was happy a lot of nights that she didn't have to cook. Where are you going tonight?
That I get.
Yep. But so the travel was in the state was pretty easy. One of the tough parts about us was my wife is a teacher, and she's, she couldn't always accompany me to the events out of state, which was, really, really too bad. But we did the best we could with what we could do.
So obviously the last 6 months have presented some unique challenges to Masons across the country and across the world. And I imagine that within your relative jurisdictions, nobody more than the three of you have been challenged by what's happening in order to make a plan and keep your jurisdictions running. So let's, talk about the elephant in the room. How have the last 6 months or the COVID pandemic in general shaped for Grandmaster Clay and Grandmaster Maggio, shaped the term that you're currently in, and Most Worshipful Poyton, your term ended recently. How did COVID shape the end of your term?
Well, basically for me, the last event that I did in person was in February. We had come from the Conference of Grandmasters, and then my wife and I went down to Florida to present some awards down there, and we came back, and that was it. That was the end of our in-person visitations and whatnot. And then, once Zoom got going, that became, for me, much more difficult because I felt that as Grandmaster, we are a servant. We're servant leaders, and everybody wants the Grandmaster to be, come to their function and make sure we realize and remember that, hey, this lodge or the Rainbow or Demolay or whatever is out there, and it's important that we go and we show our support whenever we can. And so that all stopped. But Zoom, you want me to get into this now, or I can get into it later? What how we started with the Zoom and all that. Tim, whatever you.
If you want to talk about it now, I think we can listen, and then we can hear from the two sitting Grandmasters and see how their experience is different.
Well, what we did, we did in Rhode Island, as soon as things started, the governor started clamping down, I immediately was able to say, okay, you can do this, this, and this. You can have an in-person meeting if you want with limited offices. And then I also said, you can meet by email. If that's what you can do, and the top 5 offices, would vote on the business. And so I let them do that. And I think for a lot of lodges, I said, if you do this, it's not an in-person meeting, but it will be a meeting. It counts as a meeting. And because for many of our lodges, it's that string of meetings, unbroken string, is a big deal. We've never missed a meeting, and I wanted to make sure they could do that. Rhode Island being small, we can act a lot quicker than I think some, jurisdiction like Massachusetts. We just have that ability. We've got 5 district deputies and 5 districts, and it's pretty manageable to get things going quickly in Rhode Island. And so that's what I did. I had to switch, from letting people be in the lodge almost the following week, as 2 Grandmasters will attest. Then that stopped. It was happening so quickly. We were just kind of in crisis management. How do we handle the next crisis that's going to come with us? But fortunately for Rhode Island, the lodges got on the Zoom kick right away. And so, we let the lodges meet, and I had some rules that I wanted them to follow, and after so that started in March. Probably towards the end of April, I said, okay, I've been to enough meetings to know that I've got to tighten up a little bit. to me, it was getting a little too relaxed, and the conversations, and they were forgetting titles and that type of thing, very innocently, and it's easy to do if you're not in a lodge room. And I stress, remember, you aren't in a Masonic meeting, and you have to act as such. I tightened up a little bit the dress code that was comfortable for me, and the brethren, I think, took to it very well. And I was, fortunately for me, lodges, I was done in May. I didn't have the daunting task that other grandmasters and our current grandmaster have now. I only had to worry about to the end of, the middle of May. But certainly, Masonically, in person in Rhode Island, like everywhere, it just stopped. It just came to a screeching halt. So,
obviously, the experience here in New Hampshire had some similar parallels. Most Worshipful Clay, how did you find the start of the COVID pandemic, and then the plan as you've evolved over the course of the last 6 months?
But I think the brethren of New Hampshire know that myself and the Grand Line, we were going a mile a minute. We were probably having 5 to 6 events a week, traveling like crazy. And then March for me was the last time that I did a face-to-face. I did an installation with our deputy Grand Master in Franklin, and then that was it. I will say, though, that what really impresses me is that in times of crisis, you really see certain people stepping up. My Grand Line and our Grand Lodge office and our Grand Lodge Communication Committee really, really did a fantastic job throughout the entire process. From the point that we realized that we had to stop face-to-face engagements until where we are here today, I thought we all worked as a very cohesive team in making sure that the brethren of New Hampshire really understood what they could and couldn't do and under what guidelines they had to operate. Clearly, there were some things that we instituted that people weren't happy about. Not everyone is thrilled with wearing a mask. I understand that. But there's things that we had to do based on CDC, local, state, and federal guidelines. So I appreciate the brethren being so flexible throughout that process, but I really want to thank the team that stood up to really taking a gut punch and doing a fantastic job of keeping all the members of our jurisdiction informed.
Personally, as I said, as a Master of a Lodge in New Hampshire, the communication was critical. There was a lot going on, and it was changing every day, so it was good to have that communication. Now, Most Worshipful Maggio, I've saved you for last Grandmaster because your experience where you are was clearly different than I think the rest of us. So Massachusetts was one of the hardest hit states, and it came early and it came fast. So I'd like to hear your insight into the last 6 months.
Well, I was installed on December 27th, 2019. And over the course of January and February, we had a significant amount of events. And we were scheduled to have our first quarterly communication with me as Grand Master on March 10th. On March 9th, the whole thing came down like a house of cards in Massachusetts. So on March 9th, I was confronted with what am I going to do tomorrow, because we had made arrangements for 200 for lunch, 600 for the quarterly. We had meals, we had transportation preparations, and now I'm confronted with what do we do? Well, we had to shut down the fraternity that night. We had a good system of communication, and we were able to contact everyone that was supposed to attend in the morning at 7 a.m. There's quite a few that come in early. And as it turned out, we only had one brother that showed up that didn't get the message out of 600. Wow. We were pretty happy with that. Not happy that we missed the quarterly. I had spent the day before researching the proceedings from the pandemic of 1918, and I found no reference to that pandemic. And I said, wow, so I'll be the first one to not have a quarterly in 287 years. So we canceled the quarterly, and then no one was happy. I was getting calls from all the associated bodies of masonry, wanting to know what they were going to do, how we were going to do it, when we were going to do it, when we could start meeting again, and that was only on day one. At that point, we put out a statement, and that statement was that we were going to follow all federal, local, state guidelines and work under their guidelines. And I was empowering all of the lodges, all of the masters to interpret those guidelines and move forward. And since that date, I have not put on any additional restrictions or guidelines and merely said, follow the guidelines set out by the various governmental agencies. And that's how we're proceeded since day one.
I think, for me, what made me act so quickly is, all heck was breaking loose, and I got 2 messages from 2 lodges. They were going to be doing degree work that week, and I'm like, I said, gee, I don't think they're listening to the news. So, they obviously were very upset that I did what I did, but we had no choice. And working with the Grand Council and the district deputies and our Grand Secretary, it was very helpful.
Obviously, the challenges have been difficult for everybody involved, but I guess one of the questions that I have is, from your perspective, what are some of the benefits the fraternity has gained as a result of this shift to Zoom or this shift to more open and direct online communication?
I'd love to start that one. So there's a call that started. Happens initially, it was running every Tuesday. It's now every other Tuesday. But these 2 brethren here on the screen with me, I've been more connected to them over the last 6 months than I had in my entire Masonic career, and it's because we started what was called the New England Grand Masters Call on Tuesday evenings. Went from 7:30 to about 9 o'clock, and we basically spoke about whatever it was that was on our mind at the moment. So as you can well imagine, early on, we were kind of comparing notes on how are you handling COVID? What are you doing to shut down? What are you doing to bring things back up? It was a great information sharing experience. It's now, since then, expanded to many more jurisdictions beyond New England that are involved. And that brings a different perspective because a number of those jurisdictions geographically are much, much larger than any state in New England. So what started out as a nice information sharing session that we had with the Grand Masters, and I will point out that all the Grand Masters of New England participated in this. It was a great event that's now expanded to something even larger and more effective.
Yeah, with reference to that, that's one of the huge benefits that's resulted from this pandemic. As much as each one of us would love to take credit for being leaders and getting the job done, it truly was, at least in New England, a 6-state collaborative effort to figure out how to deal with this. And we all participated, we all had input, and we all benefited by that collaboration, which frankly, as much as we do talk to each other on a regular basis, it was nothing compared to this. It really brought us all very close together and helped us all get the job done.
So other than the pandemic, what sort of challenges have you faced as Grand Master during your respective terms? I guess for me, I wanted to make sure that I was
where I could go to every event that I was invited to and still maintain that balance at home and for my own health too, obviously, because it's easy for your health to get away from you. You're doing so many things and you're going out so much. It's easy to forget about yourself, and we're fortunate we have our wives saying, what are you doing? You've got to stop for a minute, I think. I'm digressing, but what was the question?
Other than the COVID pandemic, what sort of challenges have you faced as Grand Master that we as members may not be visible to?
It's the demands on the office, really, that, the bell rings, you think you're busy as a district deputy, and, that's all the fun stuff. It's fun. And when you become Grand Master, you're the representative of your grand jurisdiction, and the phone or the emails, they just don't stop coming, and you want to be able to answer every single one, and you want to make sure, I always wanted to make sure if I was an event, boy, I had a good message to bring. I wanted to make sure that I was a good steward of the office, and I was always like, hopefully I'm saying the right thing. That was always first and foremost in my mind, and that I was, making the brethren proud of me as Grand Master, and that they were proud of what was going on in Rhode Island.
I was driving home from my home lodge almost a year ago, and I looked at my phone. I had started my car, and I looked at my phone. I'd gone out in the parking lot, and I had a message, and it said, "Morrison Lodge is on fire."
Oh boy, yeah.
And I thought, well, does that mean they're doing a lot of really good things and they're on fire? Or does it mean something else? Regrettably, it meant something else. Which I think, Tim, this is another thing that, at least in the case of New Hampshire, it takes 10 years as you prepare yourself to be Grand Master, and you're confronted with all sorts of issues. But this one, you just can't plan for. And I think that's why it makes the two individuals here on this call with me so special. It's because you just never know what's going to happen that hasn't happened to this point in your Masonic career. And it's a credit to them to be able to adapt and pivot and adjust as well as they have.
Grandmaster Maggio, I know that I think you've had the shortest term so far, but I'd love to hear from you as to what your biggest challenge has been so far.
My biggest challenge, and it's probably more of a personal one because I never realized how much of it existed, but it's upsetting when you don't see harmony in your lodges. When you have we have a big jurisdiction, so don't let me take it out of perspective. It's not a lot, but when you're personally dealing with it every day, it's overwhelming. Past masters that just won't give up control and let their new leaders lead is very frustrating because it doesn't allow for growth. Harmony between blue lodges and building associations, big one. Those who control the building want to control the lodge. And then having to deal with, reprimands, suspensions, and expulsions. There aren't a lot of them, but every one I feel requires a significant amount of due diligence because not only you're talking about a brother, you're talking about a brother that may have strayed off somewhat, and how we treat them could have significant effect not only on their Masonic life, but on their personal life as well. So I spend a lot of time doing the background work before I make any decisions regarding things like suspensions or expulsions. And that's tough. It's a tough thing to do. It's very challenging.
So it's come up a couple of times here in this conversation when you speak about your terms. But in doing research for this episode, I learned that the three gentlemen who we've got here with us tonight have drastically different term lengths within their jurisdictions. I would say drastic; it's a relative term, I guess. But most worshipful brother Poyton, you ended your term in May, and in Rhode Island, Grand Masters only serve a single-year term. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. Which means you are going 100 miles an hour for 365 days a year. You got to get it all in one time. And if you have initiatives that you want to do, you have to be respectful to the Grand Master. When you deputy Grand Master, you're to be seen. As my father used to say when we were little children, you're to be seen and not heard. But you have things that you want to do, and you have to do it very, very quietly. Or when you become Grand Master, that year is up, and the initiatives that you want to do, you can't do. And so I was fortunate that my predecessor, Most Worshipful Carlson, allowed me to do things quietly, while I was Deputy Grand Master. And, even then I think, you have these ideas and you put people together, but it really doesn't get going until you're Grand Master. Okay, he's Grand Master. This is serious stuff. He really wants this done. And, it takes a long time, to put programs together. And, I wanted to resurrect our leadership in the grand jurisdiction. And what I wanted to do, instead of having Grand Lodge do all the talking, I picked 5 pretty recent past masters of lodges that I knew that had done a very good job and were really thoughtful brethren. And I said, you, under the tutelage of a past Grand Master, I said, come up with a program, and me, managing, the professional life, it happens, you can make things happen pretty quick in the business world, not so much in the fraternal world. When we started the leadership, I said, well, you'll be done it'll be done by September. Well, September came and gone, and October did, November did, December, January. We're getting close, but these were thoroughbreds that I put on this committee, and they really took it very personal. And I thought it would be helpful when we had these sessions that it was coming peer to peer. It wasn't Grand Lodge coming down. It was like, I know Mike. I know Mike very well. What's he got to say? What were his issues when he was master? And that stuff, if it actually, they had their first presentation to the brethren a week after I was done being Grand Master. But, that stuff happens. And, what are you going to do? Because there's not much you can do. We had a big issue in Rhode Island with our building. It needed a lot of work, and a lot of work that was going to be done. No one would ever even see it because it was inside the walls. We had some water damage, but if you're prepared, it was a pretty easy sell to the brethren. We got very fortunate with the stock market, doing what they did. And again, I thought that was going to be a lot faster than it really was too. I figured it would have been finished by the time I was Grand Master. And we were basically just getting started with the construction, when I finished my term. So things like that are you just have to go with the flow and try to manage it.
Absolutely. Grandmaster Clay, you have a 2-year term. You're in the second year of your 2-year term. How do you feel that influences your decision making and your experience as Grand Master?
I actually think that New Hampshire was very thoughtful when they realized that a 2-year period makes really, really good sense. You know, in your first year, you're still kind of working your way in. You have a Grand Master's message. You're out speaking to the craft about that message and the impact that it could potentially have on them. But it's something that's just sinking in. I was very fortunate in my term in that what usually happens is in November, we have election of a new Grand Master. And then in the spring, we have town hall sessions. And most Worshipful Brother John Lobdell, our junior past Grand Master, gave me the opportunity during his town hall sessions in the spring of 2019 to be able to explain what my message was. And I really appreciate John letting me do that, because then in May, when I was installed as Grand Master, it gave me a chance to hit the ground running. So in the first year, you're really kind of rolling out your message. And then in the second year, you can really sit back and enjoy the fact that people understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish when you start seeing the fruits of your labors. Now, granted, this is a bit of a weird year with COVID. It's a little more challenging to be able to do that. But regardless, I think it's a very good model having a 2-year period where you use that first year to ramp up your message and then your second year to really see it take effect.
And Grandmaster Maggio, you are in your first of 3 years as Grandmaster. How do you feel that will? How do you feel that that's going to impact your experience, and what do you foresee your job as Grandmaster over the course of those 3 years?
Well, the obvious is continuity of programs, goals, and agenda moving forward. We've got 3 years to do it. One of the things that has struck me right off the bat is that in spite of the pandemic, I will still be able to rule, guide, and enjoy travel to other jurisdictions where most of my counterparts are not going to be able to experience a lot of the usual and customary things that we as Grandmasters do, which is unfortunate. But having said that, we have a saying in Massachusetts, and it goes something like this. It's a 3-year term. Year 1 is, I can do no wrong. Year 2 is, I can do no right. And year 3 is, no one cares. We will certainly give it our best shot for the 3 years. And, it's kind of interesting. I'm sure you, Tim, and everyone else today listening knows exactly what they would do if they became Grandmaster. If I was Grandmaster, this is what I'd do. Not ever thinking it would ever be sitting in that chair. And then you have to really sit and think long and hard about all those things that you wanted to do. Maybe or maybe they don't make as much sense as they do now. So that's
if nothing else, my last 18 months as Master has shown me that no matter what intentions I had going into the chair, I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I was sitting in it. So I completely understand that sentiment. It's a different world, and to live that and to deal with it through 1, 2, or 3 years, that's a lot of work to handle, and it's a big agenda to get through. And especially in the case of Rhode Island, a single year seems like it would be a really tough time to get your goals accomplished.
Yeah, it is. It's like you're just going 100 miles an hour from day one, and that is a challenge. The way where Rhode Island is a progressive line, and you're from start to finish, it's 9 years, and you get 5 years as a district deputy, and those are the fun years because you don't have to really make a lot of decisions. You can just you can always put them up the ladder. And then, when you become a member of the Grand Council, it's a little more, now you're focusing on the business side, right? And you're seeing a part of that you didn't know. And that type of thing.
So that's another interesting point, and I think we'll work with that. Your path to Grand Master is certainly different than I know New Hampshire's is, in that you serve 5 years as a district deputy, and then there's the council. Most Worshipful Clay, what was your path to the Grand Master, to the Grand Orient?
So I'm one of those rare folks that was not a district officer. I had completed my term as Master of my lodge in 2006 when I was attending a function, and I was asked to go into another room, and it was the Grand Master that was speaking with me, or soon to be Grand Master, and he said he had an important question to ask me, and that was the start. Since then, the way things work here in New Hampshire is that you start out as junior Grand Deacon, senior Grand Deacon, then you become junior Grand Warden, senior Grand Warden, Deputy Grand Master, and Grand Master. So for us, it's a 12-year journey. Very rewarding journey.
Oh, yeah.
And Grand Master Maggio, how does it work in Massachusetts?
Very differently.
Oh, boy.
We have no progressive line. There is none. There is one qualification to be Grand Master, and that is you have to be a past master. However, we do have many traditions. What the sitting Grand Master yearly appoints a deputy Grand Master. That's an appointed position, and it's yearly, and it's by the sitting Grand Master. Simultaneously, the sitting Grand Master will select two brothers to run for the warden positions, two for each position. So 2 juniors, 2 seniors. There will be an election in December. Now, those wardens and that deputy serve 1 year and become what we call permanent voting members of Grand Lodge. And then they go into a pool. And from that pool is selected the next Grand Master. And he is selected by the past Grand Masters, of which there are currently 7 living. Their choice typically runs unopposed at the December quarterly communication and is installed on December 27th for a 1-year term, and typically serves 3 one-year terms. Now, nominations may be accepted from the floor. However, the last time that happened was 1862. So if you can picture that, you've got a deputy, senior, and junior on a yearly basis. So during my term, in theory, I would have 12, 3 deputies, 3 seniors, and 3 juniors that will go into that pool. And currently that pool sits at about 85 members. And then come around March, April, May, the past Grand Masters huddle tightly and behind closed doors for several weeks, and they wait for the smoke to come out of the chimney, and we have
I was just thinking it sounds like a Vatican Council.
And that's pretty much the way it works.
Wow, I actually didn't know that. That's a really interesting method of selecting a Grand Master. Which office got you into the pool?
I was junior Grand Warden in 2015.
Okay.
And then in 2000, interestingly enough, I was asked by my predecessor in 2017 to be Grand Marshal. Typically, a Grand Marshal is not a permanent member. It's usually a past master. He asked me. I accepted. We had a great 3-year run. And much to my surprise, I woke up one morning and got a phone call and said, "You're it. Get ready."
Wow. That is an interesting method of selection. I never considered something like that. For Most Worshipful Poyton and Grandmaster Clay, both of you served as Deputy Grand Master in a progressive line. How do you feel that term as Deputy Grand Master prepared you for being Grand Master?
Ken?
Okay. Well, I thought that it really started when I became a district deputy, when I went in line, because that set the tone that the brethren would learn about me. So, I was about, as in Rhode Island, a district deputy installs every lodge in his district. So we do the whole installation. So by the time I'm finished, we've done an installation at every single lodge. So they all get to see me. And they saw how serious I was, and wanting to make sure that I gave them a good installation, and then got out of the way. I felt that, to an extent, I'm like a referee at a football game. If you do your job, people don't even see you. And I just felt that in my grand marshal, my master of ceremonies, we just do a good job and get out of the way. But people got to know me on the way up, so there wasn't really a lot of surprise. There weren't any. I don't think the surprise that I heard the most when I became Grandmaster. Oh, he's kind of funny, because I was so serious, wanting to do such a good job on the way up. They thought I was, this no frills, no nothing, no person is all serious, but they were surprised when I actually could lighten up a little bit, and so in Rhode Island, once you're done with being a district deputy, then you become junior grand warden, and that is a bear of a year. Everything gets dumped on the junior grand warden in Rhode Island. You've got to plan all the functions, and of course you are the liaison between all the grand officers and the grand master. So everybody's calling you and asking, what do you think? And then you got to reach out to the grand master. So, and then senior warden comes, and Rhode Island, you've got 2 years to get ready to be grand master. And so we don't ask a lot of the senior grand warden and the deputy grand master to do things. I did some traveling as deputy grand master just because, that's the way it worked out for my predecessor. And so for me, it was okay, get the engines charged. And so when I became grand master, I thought I was somewhat fresh, really.
How about you, Grandmaster Clay?
So that's really where this came from. In New Hampshire, when you're deputy grand master, there's a couple of things that kind of slow up a little bit. You don't have quite as much ritual that you have to recite during things like lodges of instruction and annual and semi-annual communications. And I really think that the system was built so that you are waiting a time with patience, but knowing that time is coming quickly. So it's where you really have to start your planning. It's really where you need to start lining up who are going to be the appointed offices during your term that are going to take the Grand Lodge of New Hampshire to a different level. So I was also very, very fortunate in that Most Worshipful Brother Lobdell was a tremendous mentor, spent a lot of time with me, encouraging me to make sure that I had all of my plans in place, coaching me and all along the way. So that's one of the things that I've really found about this journey is that you really do develop an extended family, if you will, of brethren. You're with them for 10 to 12 years. And I was very fortunate in that the Grand Master ahead of me took me by the arm and really helped me every step of the way.
Now, piggybacking on Grandmaster Maggio's comment, it looks like there might be some discussion in the chat here about Grand Marshals becoming Grand Master. I believe Jerry Becker has joined us, and I think he's trying to run from that duty there, Ken. You may want to watch out.
I think he is, but I will say that Grandmaster Maggio was a fantastic Grand Marshal. But this Jerry Becker, man, he is awesome. We were at a lodge last night, and the question was asked, Jerry, how long have you been our Grand Marshal, and he answered 14 years. He's been in that role for 14 years, and I'll share a little story. When I was speaking with the person who I had planned to appoint as the junior Grand Deacon, his lady had one caveat in him saying yes, and that was that Jerry Becker continued to be the Grand Marshal. So I went to Jerry and said, "Please, you have to stay with us." And thank goodness he did. He's a great guy.
Fantastic. Yeah, some of my most pervasive memories of Masonry. Jerry has been Grand Marshal for my entire career in Masonry, and he's always been there, and it's always a sight to see. We do have a question in the chat, and I think this is one that many people may want to hear. With Masonry changing and adapting to modern times, the conversation about merging lodges is certainly something that gets out there more and more, and we certainly hear about it more and more. And I guess the question in the chat was, do you think that it's healthy for the craft?
Hey, Tim, I'm going to take a shot at that one. It's interesting. Most of our brothers don't really know our history. And if you go back in our history, you'll find out that these times aren't much different than previous times. And over the years, many, many, many lodges have merged in the past. So it's not really unusual. I think if you went back over the proceedings of New Hampshire and Rhode Island, you'd probably find the same things. New lodges come online and other lodges merge. The only downside that I see with merged lodges is you lose your community's identity. And that can be a little problematic. It's very difficult to maintain that when you merge with another lodge and you start meeting in a different community. You start to lose those ties over time. And I don't know what the answer to that is.
Ken?
It's you're right. Grandmaster Maggio, you do lose your place in the community. I can remember in Situate, where I was in DeMolay, our lodge was strong. It was a strong lodge, and then they just get tired. And but you could always go to the art festival or whatever and know. Okay, I know where I'm going to park. I know I'm going to be able to sit and talk to brethren and just shoot the breeze and have a place to, just sit down and talk. And but unfortunately, lodges get tired. The brethren get tired, and it's tough when a lodge goes dark. But it's usually the best thing for that lodge. And we had one lodge merge. It was very sad for the lodge that had to go dark, but I was very, I was confident that the lodge that they merged with was going to make sure they honored that lodge that merged with them. They did. It happened to be good timing because Jenks, they were losing their temple. They were actually going to lose their building due to some construction going on in Pawtucket. So they actually moved, and they moved to where St. Andrews met, which is, a beautiful place. And, but more importantly, they remember the lodges that merged in with them, and at least once a year, what they do is they will take the cover, the altar cover, and of whatever lodge merge, and that will be the altar, covering for that meeting. So, every year at least St. Andrews they remember St. Andrews. And so many times, I think we've all seen it. A merge happens, and the brethren from the lodge that went dark, they just stop going. They don't feel welcome.
I think that change is inevitable, even for Masons, we all know that we don't like to change, but it has to happen. So when you reach that point where you realize that a change is needed, there are a couple things that we've done here in the Grand Lodge of New Hampshire. The first is we put together a merger checklist that we make available to the district deputy grand masters to work with the lodge masters so that they can go through and make sure they're doing a really good job of making sure, in fact, this is the right thing for the two impacted lodges. And then the other thing that we do is we assign a member of the Grand Lodge line to be a part of that committee as an oversight to provide mentoring, if you will, to provide instruction and guidance on anything they might have missed. Unfortunately, over time, I've seen mergers fail miserably. I'd like to think that since some of these recent changes have been made, that the merger process has gone well. I think the single biggest message that we can give to any lodge that's considering merging is we need to absolutely make sure that we respect the previous lodge and the members of that lodge as they're welcomed into a combined lodge. We need to make sure that they feel every bit as welcome in the new lodge as they did in the merged lodge.
I think that's a great point, and I think that echoed across all three answers, is that making sure the history and the membership is maintained to the standards that they expect. I think that's a really good way to put that. We are about to hit an hour, and that means we're going to start wrapping up. So in order to wrap up, I have two questions that I'd like to ask each of you. These questions are more personal and relate more to you as Masons and Grand Masters than I think some of these other ones have. The first question is, if you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to yourself when you were raised, what would that piece of advice be?
So I'll go first. I think the advice would be to thoroughly enjoy the journey from day one. I think it's just natural, as it is in human life, that as the clock keeps ticking, you look back and you say, wow, that was really fun. I wish I had enjoyed it more at the time. The moment you become an entered apprentice, that clock begins. Start the enjoyment of your journey and absolutely fulfill it to your best throughout.
Grandmaster Maggio?
I would echo Brother Clay's thoughts as well. And I think it's more, I think when we come into the craft, there's a lot that we don't know. It's a learning experience. It's an educational experience. And if I had the knowledge that this craft provides so many things, like the means and methods to accomplish things that I never thought I could, and the fraternity is responsible for that. But you have to ask for the help. You have to ask for a little assistance. The other piece is that, and I've been promoting this lately, is that dues card is really a passport. I consider it a passport. That's what I speak about a lot now. It's a passport to go anywhere in the world, and you'll be recognized as a brother, and you'll have a friend. And I don't know if we really comprehended that, if I comprehended that at the beginning of the journey. I know it was said, but I didn't think I really comprehended that. I think we have to really make that known to new entered apprentices that it's such a wonderful journey. And again, as Brother Clay said, but you have to enjoy it. And enjoying it means getting out of the lodge room.
Oh, absolutely. I visited lodges in the Bahamas. I visited the Grand Lodge of Ireland, and you're right. That document is a passport. I don't know what I expected when I walked into a lodge in a foreign jurisdiction, and the experience that I received as a brother was exactly the same as I would have experienced at home, and that was an eye opener for me. Yeah. Most Worshipful Brother Poyton?
Well, this is a classic case of when you're Grand Master, you're the last to speak. So you're sitting there in a lodge room and you're calling on everybody to speak, and they're like, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to say that now. I guess I'm not going to say that because they're all saying it. But I don't think I could say it really any better. Enjoy the journey and make the most of it. Pay attention when you're traveling. And boy, I know we went to a vacation and it was Bermuda, and we were going to the beach, and there's a lodge. They have they were the vendor for selling soft drinks, on the beach. And it was just wonderful, and you just have to enjoy it, and you have to listen to the brethren, because they really want to share their knowledge with you. I remember when I became an entered apprentice, the next day I went to work, and lunchtime came, and John said, come here, come into my office. Do you have your book with you? I'm like, well, no, I don't have my book. And what are you doing? And he was a past master of a lodge, and he said, you bring your book every day now. And, I was fortunate that he wasn't even a member of the lodge, and we worked every day on that. And, we became great friends. The friendships that we make is unbelievable. I can, I would go to Scottish Rite before I was in Grand Line, and, I'd see so-and-so in a distance, but I never really got to know him until I started this journey. And that you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah, you hit on a key point there, Brother Poyton, and that was, and I don't think we realize it when we start. Stay away from the clique. Stay away from your friends. Reach out to everyone in the lodge. They have so much to offer. They're so interesting. They're such great men. And initially you're new, so you don't leave your comfort zone. You're with one or two brothers, maybe three or four, and you kind of hang with them all the time. Reach out to all the other members. Some of my best experiences have been with those that I never knew, and when I finally reached out to them, I was just amazed.
That's fantastic advice. And then the last question that I'm going to ask the three of you, and we'll start with Most Worshipful Brother Poyton. What, in your case, what do you miss most about being Grandmaster?
Well, forget about the COVID, okay? Let's pretend that didn't happen. What I miss, I think if I miss it in Rhode Island, it's because I don't go anywhere anymore, right? So the brotherhood, the camaraderie, that's up to me to make sure that doesn't stop when I'm in Rhode Island. But what I will miss is the traveling outside of the jurisdiction. My wife and I have made extraordinary, lifelong friendships that we're going to miss that. We will miss that, and we know we have to work hard to make sure those relationships continue. I mean, I say a funny story, but we were at an event. I think it was in New Hampshire at when the Northeast Conference of Grandmasters, and it was at the airport, right? And my wife was speaking to Most Worshipful Brother Maggio's wife. And we're like, well, who's going to tell him we want to go to bed? So I guess I'll do it, right? And I went over and said to my wife, we're thinking about going to bed. She said, excuse me, I'm in the middle of a conversation.
I remember that.
The women, I think, became tighter than the men. But that's what I will miss. Just seeing Most Worshipful Brother Clay and his wife. And it's just, boy, we made some great friends.
Grandmaster Clay, your final term as Grand Master will end in May of 2021. What do you think it is that you're going to miss most about being Grand Master?
It's interesting. You start ticking off the box of a bunch of, well, that's the last of that, and that's the last of that. And it catches up over time because you realize that a number of things won't happen again. Ken, I completely agree with you. The ability to travel outside the jurisdiction, to continue to foster friendships with those folks is definitely going to be missed. If I were to pick one other thing, I know it may sound odd, but I'm going to miss line meetings. I meet with the Grand Line every month, and we get together and we break bread and we meet for about 3 hours, and we discuss the business of Freemasonry, soup to nuts, the good, the bad, and the not so good. And from that, we have bonded such a friendship. Everyone, from the junior Grand Deacon to the Grand Master, we all consider ourselves family. And I'm really gonna miss those monthly opportunities to sit down with those guys and share.
Grandmaster Maggio, you still have 27 months left in your term. You've really just kicked off your time as Grand Master, and you've already been presented with these challenges. So maybe you don't know the answer to this yet, but as of today, what do you think you're going to miss most about being Grand Master?
Well, I've been paying attention to what my two esteemed colleagues have said, and I'm going to do all that for 27 months. I think it's going to be some of it's going to be the daily interactions, because I'm hands-on, 24/7, 7 days a week. That's going to be one piece of it. The relationships that we've made throughout New England, and that's now extended throughout the world. It's going to be tough to duplicate that or to stay in touch at the same level that we are now. But I will say this, I think it's this, with as Grand Master or as Master of your lodge, we both have those opportunities. We need to take advantage of them while we're in those positions. And then we need to figure out a way to keep it going after. And that's what's going to be tough.
Absolutely. With that, brethren, I have no more questions. I think that you have answered far more than we expected, and I think we had a great night and a great conversation. So allow me to extend my thanks on behalf of the Grand Lodge of New Hampshire and the membership in New Hampshire for joining us this evening. Most Worshipful Brother Poyton, I know that you have served as Grand Master. We also invited Most Worshipful Brother Gary Kaufman to join us this evening. He was otherwise engaged, but we'd like to thank you and the Grand Lodge of Rhode Island for being here. Most Worshipful Brother Maggio, thank you, and the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts. And Most Worshipful Brother Clay, thank you so much for allowing us to have this venue and speak with the brothers and hear stories and share those stories with the members of New Hampshire and whoever else may be tuned in. So thank you all.
Tim, I wanted to extend your thanks to these distinguished brethren. Brethren, what did Grandmaster Maggio said? He said, get outside the four walls of your lodge, travel and see other things. And I think what we've done tonight is we've traveled outside the four walls of New Hampshire, and we've seen what happens in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. It's opened our eyes to new opportunities. So I want to thank these two fine men for taking time out of their family time to be here with us this evening.
Always a
Very
pleasure.
welcome.
And
Thank
on
you for asking.
absolutely, go
Thank
ahead.
you for remembering me.
I owe you each an ice cream.
Ooh, okay.
Me too.
We're coming.
Ken, me too.
Absolutely, Tim.
I do love a good ice cream. Thank you. Brethren, thank you for joining us this evening. And the Granite Cornerstone will be back on November 1st with episode 3. We've been there, where we hope to listen to 3 brothers who have served Freemasonry for over 40 years each. So thank you for being here with us tonight, and hopefully we'll see you on November 1st. Have a good night.